The Metroid series has mastered atmospheric horror. Without being scary, you can still be tense. And that's great. So, recently I binged through the entirety of the 2D Metroid lineup. And, frankly, if you can get past its growing pains, it's actually quite good. So, I've decided I'm going to do the only reasonable thing and review 5 games in one video. Mostly because the early games are kind of negative, and the later games are quite positive. So it only makes sense to get all the negative stuff out of the way in parts 1 and 3. Also, no, this isn't a multi-part video. I'm just splitting it into parts for the sake of editing and all that crap. Chapter 1. Zero Mission. Metroid 1 is a good game. I played Zero Mission, just for clarification's sake, and I didn't hate it. It's fine. It is not bad. It is not amazing. One of its biggest problems is it's hard to figure out where you're going. In my experience, you can explore for about an hour, then you get completely lost and have no clue where the next objective is, so you end up having to look it up. You get another hour. Basically, in this 4-hour game, you spend about half of it looking through guides. Which isn't a bad thing. If a game has complicated puzzles and you need guides to help solve them, that's fine. But it's this instance where you have no idea where you're supposed to be going and you need guides that I think is a problem. And you'll see this recur in a few games. There are very few that I didn't have this problem with. But Metroid 1 was the second most egregious. Now, the bosses are all quite fun. Albeit, there is a massive difficulty curve at the Mother Brain fight. Weirdly massive difficulty curve. But, yeah. And then, the Zero Mission part of Zero Mission, it's fine. I know a lot of people enjoy it. Some people think it's their favorite part. Including my friend. But I don't really have much to say. And it's weird. It's weird. But overall, I don't hate it. But the Zero Mission part, I don't like. I'm very much of a barrage through the game kind of person. So having to take things slow, for me, was annoying. But that is almost solely personal preference, and just that type of gameplay not being as much of a cup of tea. Now, for quick clarification, I didn't dislike the Zero Mission part. It's just, it's so much slower and so much more methodical because you're really helpless. And the thing is, I like the sections where you're helpless. It's just, I don't know. This one specific part felt so much weaker than the others. I don't know if it's because you're helpless for such a long period of time, where in the other sections I'll talk about later, you're only helpless for around a few minutes, instead of an entire, practically half the game. I don't know. I don't dislike Zero Mission. It just happens to be, I prefer being able to just either run away from a foe that I can't defeat, or shoot the crap out of everything that comes in my way. That's just how I play these games. Chapter 2. Another Adventure. Metroid 2. There's 3 versions of this game. Samus Returns, Return of Samus, and AM2R. I played AM2R, but let's quickly mention the official remake. Samus Returns is good. The combat mechanic, it can be a bit hard to navigate. But AM2R, I love the absolute dread when you're about to encounter a Metroid. Because it's like, crap. You know a boss is coming. It's like, crap, this is not good. And then when a new type of Metroid appears, it's like, crap, how do I deal with this? Specifically, the second type of Metroid, I believe it's Gamma Metroid. I was shooting at its weak spot, but I was a pixel off. So I'm like, why is it taking damage? Why is it not getting hurt? How do I defeat this? And I just ran in fear. So, it was a really cool fight. It was a really cool fight. And the rest of the game is like that. It's fun to explore and fun to navigate, and I'm tripping over a dog. But I really enjoyed the game. Now, I wasn't kidding when I said encountering Metroids were kind of scary. At least the first encounter of each type. Because you enter an area expecting to see a Metroid because the trail is the same. Some dead Metroid carcasses, a shedded skin, you know, usual stuff. But you enter and are attacked by this being you have no clue how to damage. Especially the third type, where it's hit, like where its damage spot has been moved. You're just in panic trying to figure out how to damage this monster you've never come across before. And generally, that's what I think is the amazing about this game. I never got stuck once. I never needed a guide. Now, I did need a guide for Samus Returns. But I really love AM2R. And I highly recommend it if you're a fan of Metroidvanias. And if you want to give this franchise a shot, at least for 2D Metroid, it's probably the way to go. Considering the game's free online since it's a fan game, it's probably the best way to get into the series. Especially since it really isn't plot heavy. And you don't need to know about the events of the prior game, unlike the other games I adore, like D.R.E.A.D, which is very much plot heavy. Basically, this is one of the ones I can actually say confidently, if you're gonna start Metroid for 2D stuff, or you're a Metroidvania fan that wants to see where the series came from, this is the game I recommend. Chapter 3, Super Bad. The worst Metroid game. Super Metroid is awful. It controls like crap, because nothing feels like it has weight to it at all. It's impossible to navigate. Worse than Zero Mission. Like, this is one where you need a guide constantly, compared to Zero Mission, where you need a guide, like, half the time. It's ridiculous. It is awful. I hate it. It is the one Metroid game I couldn't finish. Like, every other of these games, I finished in, like, 2-3 settings. Specifically Super, I couldn't get past. It was awful. Awful, awful, awful. I hated it so much. But then, what I mean when I say Samus controls awfully is that, frankly, she controls like she doesn't have any weight to her. She is so floaty, it feels so awkward and uncomfortable. You don't get heals by saving anymore, nor are there replacements like recharge stations. Frankly, the game just feels bad to control. No, I get this is technically the oldest out of all of these, since Zero Mission did come after, since it's a remake, but frankly, Super just isn't good. Not to mention, so many things are so different from the rest of the series and feel jank. Like, for example, you need specifically to shoot missiles at a door 5 times, instead of every other instance's 1. But I'm not too sure if this game is good, or if it just needs a remake to fix its issues. I'm hoping that is the case, but if it gets a remake, I don't think I'll need to pick it up. Chapter 4, Advanced Fusion. Metroid Fusion. Fusion has my favorite design of Samus. Yes, this is a dread suit, but it's also the first game to really directly call Samus a girl. Which is weird, like, because I've gone into this. I've played Smash for years. I have, like, 400 hours in Smash Ultimate alone. And probably another 304. So going into this, it's like, I know Samus is a girl, but the rest of the series is so hesitant to even tell you that. At most, you can pick it up in her death animations half the time. But it's really neat. The game actually gives you a navigator. Now, Some people may complain about Fusion being way too linear. However, that linearity does make the game more streamlined. And I think D.R.E.A.D fixes this problem with a mix of, it is linear, but there are multiple ways to get to the path. And the linearity just makes it so the game's easier to know where to go. But Fusion, I adore. And it introduced, or at least perfected, my favorite part of the Metroid series. The atmospheric horror. Every time an SA-X appears, you have no choice but run. If it sees you, you are dead. Often, you'll walk into a room and it will quickly walk in behind you, or you'll fall into a room and be immediately into its sights. If that happens, run and hide. There is nowhere else to go if you don't want to die. It is horrifying, and I love it. And I love in D.R.E.A.D when we see a little bit of bits from the previous games, an actual piece of artwork of the SA-X. Their eyes are completely lifeless. They are monstrous murder machines that will stop at nothing to kill everyone they see. And it is terrifying, and I love it. I think they're so scary, so cool. They are probably my favorite part of the entire series. Because that feeling of dread, not knowing when these things are going to appear next, and if they do, that you're just going to die, is terrifying. And it's amazing.
Now, I spent a lot of time talking about the SA-X, but generally in Fusion, I needed a guide once or twice, but due to the fact it ends up being more linear than the other games, it is quite streamlined, and I don't know. It's bad in the degree of it is a bit linear, but it's not so linear where you have to go exactly on the beaten path, but more, it's linear in terms of you can't go, okay, go in whatever order you want. It's go to Area 1, do your stuff in Area 1, okay, now you're done with Area 1. Now you can go to Area 2. And that instead means, aside from exploring for extra collectibles, the game ends up being linear, which means you don't get lost every 5 seconds, which is really nice. Secondly, this is my favorite control Samus gets, and my favorite art style she gets, and my favorite suit she gets. I can keep listing things I like about Fusion. Like, out of the official Metroid games I've played, it's probably number 2. Number 3 if we count AM2R. And, frankly, I love this game. It's great. I highly recommend it. Although I was a bit lost during certain bits in the plot, because I think they may have had something to do with Prime. I don't know. But, some guy that's brought up and important in both this game and D.R.E.A.D I've never seen or heard of before these games. It's just important now. Were they introduced in Prime? Probably. Do I have intent to play Prime? No. I'll be honest, I'm not much of a FPS person. And, yeah. But, honestly, it's a good game, and I do recommend it if you're a fan of the series. Chapter 5, D.R.E.A.D.
Lastly, the newest entry, at the time of recording this, Metroid D.R.E.A.D. I know I should have held up on Metroid Amiibo, but I don't own one, so. The Emmys were advertised as a lot bigger focus than they actually are, in my opinion. There's only 7 of them. Frankly, they aren't that important. About halfway through the game, you're pretty much done with them. And I do appreciate by the halfway point, you can pretty much kill the Emmys in any order. But, I don't know. They just feel unimportant. But being in the room of an Emmy, not knowing where it is for the first minute, or your first few times encountering an Emmy, it is scary. There's specifically a moment late in the game where You walk into a room, an enemy appears, there's no escape, and you can't kill an enemy. So, you're just terrified, and then a cool cutscene happens. The enemies do also cause a sense of dread. More so than the SAX, in terms of, they will one-shot you. But the SAX are pretty much guaranteed one-shots as well. They just don't do it instantly. You can survive a couple hits from them. But they can't be stopped. The enemies can be stopped, but insta-kill you, and there's a one-frame window of opportunity to stop them. So, both are pretty much unstoppable forces. Do I prefer the SAX or the EMMI? The SAX, they are way more terrifying in design. But I do appreciate this about the EMMI. I didn't mention this in Fusion, or maybe I did in the voiceover sections, but in Fusion, you fight these little amorphous blobs to get some of your powers back. But they don't really have any connection to that power. It's more just a way to give Samus the power. The EMMIs, the powers you get back from them, they actually do use. For example, for the Ice Beam, or Ice Missile, as it is in newer games, the EMMI that gives it to you is actually blue and freezes you on contact. It's small things like that that actually make a reason, why are you getting this ability from this enemy instead of plot contrivance or convenience for the sake of the story. And that makes such a big deal. Just because it's a reason for this to happen.
Now, I should add, as I'm recording this, Metroid Dread is still getting updates, and it recently just got a boss rush update, which, frankly, I intend to try at one point. I currently don't have my copy of Dread, because I'm lending it to someone, but honestly, Metroid Dread is an amazing game, and my thoughts when it got announced are, I'll pick it up if I can get it on sale for like $60. For clarification, that'd be about 40 US. And honestly, I was able to get it for 70 used, and I do not regret it. It's a good game. By far the longest game in the series. And is it a bit short for how much it costs you? Yes. Do I think it should have had a discounted price like WarioWare? Yes. Is it a good game? Absolutely. Is it worth it? Honestly, if Nintendo did sales, I'd say wait for a sale, but frankly, if you either really love the series or have the patience to wait for a used copy to show up on eBay or Amazon, I highly, highly recommend it. Chapter 6. S-A-E-M-M-I. Now, I guess I should finally answer the question I posed at the start of the video. How did Metroid master atmospheric horror? First, I should start with saying what atmospheric horror is. It's an atmosphere that builds tension, and that's basically it. Now, I think it's impressive how scared you can get playing a Metroid game. Now, I haven't got that scared, but I'll be honest. I started playing the FNAF games at the age of 10. And I stopped being scared of them at like 12. And Metroid isn't designed to be scary, but instead it builds up tension and, more accurately, panic. Because there's so many entities in this series that if you encounter them, you have nothing to do but run. And that isn't a joke. The Zero Mission section, every enemy, you can just run, really. The SAX, you can literally do nothing but run. They are invincible. And the EMMI, you have a one-frame window of escape if you get caught. It's not something you can escape. And all the build-up to all of these encounters, either it comes out of nowhere and you just fought a tough boss and don't have a chance to save, like the SAX, who, in reality, if you look at them, they aren't that much of a threat. I died to them once, but like, you can easily outrun them. As long as you don't get stuck on something, you can just outrun them out of the room. They don't leave their patrol area that much. And the EMMI are the same case, except for the fact you can't outrun them. But the general thing is you're given these tools that you can survive if you use them right, and it's not hard to, but not knowing when your next E.M.M.I encounter will be or how to escape is a lot different than knowing that you're either going to make it through or die. Not to mention, Metroid avoids using jump scares to create tension and horror. It instead just uses the futility of Samus's abilities and just kind of tells you, yeah, you're screwed if this thing hits you. The SA-X you can die in a few hits from and are immortal, while the E.M.M.I are literally gonna insta-kill you if you don't counter in the 1 frame window you're given to escape. And frankly, it's not bad because the game understands and you can autosave, but it still does give you a little bit of tension knowing that you could die at any moment because of these things you didn't see coming. Less so for the E.M.M.I than the SA-X, since the SA-X can appear anywhere, and the E.M.M.I, you literally have to enter a door known as the E.M.M.I zone door to even have the chance of encountering an E.M.M.I. So, frankly, the E.M.M.I are less scary because you know what they're gonna do, but still, if one manages to sneak up on you, it can be quite hairy. I meant to say terrifying, I'm leaving that in. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing. It really helps the channel out a ton.